of ye heavenly hosts. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And the church says, Amen. Amen. What a blessing to be here this morning with you and to share this time with your families and you this morning. Hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. Hope you have a happy New Year. Glad that you're here with us. You know, I was thinking this morning a little bit, this last week or two, about burdens, and I've kind of, as Brent says, you know, I kind of got to have a little Rexology with this stuff and how this goes. And so, you know, Cole here, he's a strong guy. You know Cole. So, you know, this is 10 ounces here, right? So put your hand out there. Hold that out for me, you know, just hold that. Just keep holding it out there for me like that for a minute. Because, you know, I was thinking about burdens and about, you know, how we're all different. And all of us have different strengths and all of us have different weaknesses. And some of us, maybe mentally, spiritually, are able to bear up more than others. And some people maybe are not quite as much to bear up. And so we've all kind of got our burden weight, you know, out there. How's that feeling there? So we all kind of got our burden weight that we all kind of have to deal with. And so I kind of got a little Rex terminology this morning. And the first one is our IBW. So that's important we remember this morning. Our IBWs. Hang in there, Cole. We're getting to you in just a minute. So it's the IBW, right? And that IBW, that's your individual burden weight. And so I thought about that a little bit this morning, you know. So what is your individual burden weight, and how do we figure that out? And that's where Cole's coming in here in just a minute. Hang in there, buddy. So how do we figure that out, right? How do we figure out what that is? You know, how much can I take? How much can you take before we collapse under the weight of the burdens of our life and the burdens that we have to carry? And so I thought, well, there's a formula for that, right? And so I'm a math guy, so I came up with this formula. It's W times D equals your individual burden weight. So you know, that's 10 ounces, right? Does it still feel like 10 ounces, Cole? It's getting a little heavier than 10 ounces, right? So, you know, it's not just the weight you carry, right? It's how long you got to hold it. Does that make any sense? You know, we all can do pretty good for a minute. You can let it down now, Cole. I'll give you some break. We all can do pretty good for a little bit, right? I mean, even if something tragic happens in our life or something big happens in our life, we can all do pretty good for a little while. But the truth is, if we had to maintain that over a period of time, whether that's a sickness in our family or it's a financial difficulty or whatever it is, if we had to maintain that over a period of time, it becomes really, really, really heavy in our lives. And so I came up with this formula, and I said, well, it's our individual burden weight is our weight times the duration. So, you know, in your life, it's not just what you have to do, it's how long you have to do it. Am I right about that? You know, that really figures into our life, to what we're doing. And all of us in here, we probably understand a little bit about what I'm talking about within our lives. But there comes a point when we do that, and I know Cole's pretty strong, and I almost did this to Mark. He's one of the strongest guys I know. But I'm like, I may well have an arm wrestling contest after church. But anyway, the point I'm getting to is even as strong as he is, eventually he couldn't hold that up anymore. Do you agree with that? You know, a point in time would come, he could physically not hold his arm up any longer. Even though it's only 10 ounces, that's nothing for him. 10 ounces, that's not anything. But there would come a point, if he held that out there long enough, there would come a point where he could no longer hold his arm up. He would have to put it down. He couldn't hold that weight any longer. And when you reach that point in your life, with burdens in your life, and maybe it's not a big burden, maybe it's not a huge thing, but if you've held it long enough, even if it's only 10 ounces, you're going to reach a point in your life where you've come up with my next terminology figure. It's coming. Your maximum individual burden weight, your MIBW. When you hit your MIBW, things happen, right? And if you've ever been to that point in your life, you know what I'm talking about. There comes a point where you reach your maximum burden. You can't take it any longer. Have you ever been to that point in your life? Have you ever been to that point in your life where you've reached the maximum you can handle? You say, I can't handle anything else. I'm doing all I can do. And when that happens in your life, then things go wrong in your life. When you reach your maximum individual burden weight, something's going to break. The arm's going to come down. The hammer's going to fall. Things are going to change. It has to. Because the honest truth is, all of us have a point. I don't care how strong you think you are. I don't care how much you think you can handle. There's not a single person in this auditorium this morning that doesn't have a point where you cannot do anymore. You've had enough. And when you reach that point in your life, in your job, in your marriage, your relationships, whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life, when you reach that point, something has to give. Just how it is. And we all deal with that in different ways. It can be fits of rage, anger, right? How many times you're a pretty docile person? I'm a pretty docile person most of the time. Those of you that know me know that. But you also, those of you that know me and know my humanity and know my flaws, knows that when I reach a certain point in my life, I can be a pretty angry person. And I've been known to have to throw a few fits. Just throwing that out there. So the truth is that sometimes when you reach that point, you're going to strike out because that's where you're at. A lot of times when people in our lives that are angry people, it's because literally they are doing just about all they can physically manage to do, and they're at that point that they're just angry. And you're not going to solve that until you solve what's going on within their life. We'll get into that. A lot of times it's depression. People get depressed. It's no use. You ever said that? It's just no use. Everything I do is for nothing. I can't ever get this right. Right? It's never going to get any better. There's no hope. Right? Those are things we say to ourselves. Depression. Right? Doesn't matter what I do. I can't make a difference. Right? I've been trying to do this. It's not working. I can't make it work. Right? That little voice inside your head that says, if I can't do it, then I'm just going to shut down. Right? If I can't make this work, then I'm done with it. I'm shutting down. I'm quitting my job. I'm quitting my marriage. I'm quitting whatever it is because I'm to the point that I can't do it any longer, and I give up. And I'm just going to fall into that place in my life that I'm going to be depressed, and I'm going to go and I'm going to shut myself in my room, and I'm not going to pay attention to anybody because the truth is that my life really doesn't matter anymore. Right? You know, how do people get to that point? They get to that point because why? Because these burdens have built up on them over time. They have anxiety. You know, and that's a terrible thing to have in your life, to have that anxiety in your life. You know, Peter says in 1 Peter says, cast all your anxiety on the Lord because he cares for you. But how hard is it to cast your anxiety on somebody else? How hard is it to cast your anxiety on the Lord? And that very terminology, to cast it, to do away with it. How hard is it for us to do that? The anxiety that comes, you know, we get anxious because we can't handle it. We can't handle everything that's going on. It's too much. It's too much. I can't deal with all this. I can't deal with you and the job and the kids and everything else that's going on. It's just too much. I can't do it. You know? And so we get anxious. And what happens? We go to the doctor, and the doctor gives us medication that makes us not anxious anymore. But does it solve the reason that we're anxious? It doesn't do anything for it, right? It just makes us where we don't feel it anymore. That's our society. That's the way society deals with burdens. That's the way our society deals with burdens, and we need to talk about that a little bit. Helplessness, right? Helplessness. I just can't, you know, I can't help myself. I can't do it. I can't go on. I can't do it. And eventually, sometimes that results in suicide. You know, how do people come to that point in their life where they take their own life? They do it because, you know what? They've held that 10-ounce bottle out until their arm had to come down. They couldn't do it anymore. And they didn't see another way. You know, the truth is this morning we're talking about the other way. Because I'm going to tell you, the world does not know how to deal with this. The world's answer to this is medication, drugs, therapy, right? Multitask. How many things can you do at one time? Let's buy a book about that, right? I'm sure there's books. You know there's books. How can you fit more into your life that's already too full? Let's put a little more in there, right? Let's arrange our time a little better. Let's plan our day a little more. Let's just put more in there because I can surely hold a little more. Surely I can hold 20 ounces. Surely I can hold 30 ounces. Surely I can hold 40 ounces. But then one day, strong as we are, the arm has to fall, and something's going to happen. That sounds depressing to me, right? But the truth is that that's the world's view of it, but it's not God's view of it. And that's something that you have to think about a little bit. And I have to think about this in my life. I had a really rough week. Wednesday night was terrible for me, and there's a couple of you here know that. I was at one of the worst places I've been in 5 months Wednesday night. And it was a terrible place for me. I hate being like that. But I was in that place. And I came into here, and a couple of you guys know what was going on, and you know, that's part of being a Christian, and that's what we need to talk about this morning. That's what brought on this lesson. You know, I think no matter how big you think you are, how strong you think you are, how handle everything you think you are, how much you're the go-to person in your family, everybody goes to you, right? You're the one that can take care of it. You can take care of it. He can take care of it. Do you have people like that in your life? You know, the people that if anything goes wrong, they're the ones you call. They can handle it, right? And yet sometimes people don't think that, you know, they've got a point too. They've got a place too, right? Where they're going to reach that point too. And you know, the Bible is about, and Christ is about burden relief. You know, in Matthew 11, he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden." You know, we sing that song. And some of us, you know, there's times in my life I've lived this life. Have you? You know? "Come to me, all those who are weary and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." And we got to talk about this a little bit this morning, what that means. Because what that means, and I think the point, we read this a lot of times and we don't really think about what Jesus is really saying here. Because he uses this terminology, this yoke terminology, this idea of a yoke. Now, if you're a farmer or a cattle guy, of course we don't do that anymore, but you had yokes, right? You had a yoke, and you put two oxen together or whatever, two beasts of burden, whatever your preferable beast of burden would be. You put two beasts of burdens on this yoke, right? And they would pull your plow. And I guess if you were a poor farmer, you only had one beast of burden. In that case, you did not have a yoke. And your poor beast of burden, he reached his breaking point pretty quick, I would imagine, right? But if you could afford two and you had this yoke, and isn't that what Jesus is saying? He says, put a yoke on. In other words, you're not doing it by yourself. You're yoked to something else. There's more help involved there. And he says, put my yoke on you. But I think it's interesting. Jesus doesn't say, yoke yourself to me. Jesus doesn't say, yoke yourself to me and it'll be better. He says, put my yoke on you. What's the yoke? What's the yoke that Jesus is talking about when he says that? He doesn't say, yoke yourself to me. He says, put my yoke on. He's the farmer. He's the guy in the back, right? He says, and I've got the yoke, and put my yoke on you because it's light. So what's he telling us? What's the message? What's he saying about a burden? He says, you know what? It's a whole lot easier to carry it when you're yoked to somebody else. You know, Cole can hold that, let's say, for instance, Cole can hold that 10-ounce bottle of juice up for 20 minutes. That'd be quite a while, wouldn't it? 20 minutes, he's tough. 20 minutes on his own, right? And let's say that Mark over here, he's strong too, and let's say Mark can hold that up for 25 minutes. So that's 45 minutes. They can each hold up a bottle, right? Isn't that what it is? Now there's a terminology. It actually comes from a Greek word that means together. And there's a terminology. If you've ever been to some seminars, like business seminars, you've probably heard it. And the term is the word synergy. I don't know if any of you all have ever heard that word before. You know what that word means, but it's synergy. And it comes from a Greek word that means together. And the basic principle is this. If you have if Mark has an ox and I have an ox and we both have fields and I take off with my ox and my ox can plow 5 acres in a day. That'd probably be a lot. My ox can plow an acre in a day. And Mark's ox can plow an acre and a half in a day. But the truth is, and what we found and what we know is, if you put Mark's ox and my ox together, we can plant 4 acres in a day. Those 2 ox will plow more ground than those 2 can do individually. It's be like saying if Cole can hold that up for 20 and Mark can hold it up for 25, that's 45 minutes between them, but together they can hold it up for an hour. Why is that? Why is that? Why can we do more together than we can apart individually? I think it's because that's how God made us. That's exactly what that's saying, because we encourage one another. If those 2 ox are both plowing, they're looking at that other ox and saying, well, if you can do it, I guess I can, you know. And the other ox is, I guess, if ox talk. I don't know if ox talk. And the other ox is saying, if you can do it, I guess I can, right? And it'd be like Mark and Cole. They're both pretty proud guys. It'd be like if you had an arm wrestling match, they'd both try to win. So if they're both holding up that juice, it'd be like, hey, I ain't let it go till he lets go. I ain't let it go till he lets go. Maybe we get an hour and a half, right? Right? Before they'd have to drop that. Because we do better together, and God knows that. And God encourages that in our lives and in our Christianity and in our faith. And when Christ says, put my yoke on you, that's what he's saying. He says, my yoke is for you to be together. My yoke is for you to be a team. My yoke is for you to be for each other and to pull together towards a common goal. And when you do that, you're going to accomplish more together than you ever would apart. That's exactly what we're talking about here. And so when we get to this point, he says, so what we need to do is we need to yoke ourselves with other believers, right? We need to yoke ourselves with other believers. Because when we do that, we're all pulling for the same goal. Does that make any sense? You know, when I was, the other night, Wednesday night, when things were so bad, and I got a lot of wonderful people that put up with me in spite of me, which is really a good thing. You ought to have that in your life. I would encourage to find people that will put up with you in spite of you in your life. It's a really good thing to have. But when I was having this time, you know, and I was talking to these guys Wednesday night, and the truth is that they were worried about me. But the truth is, they were worried about me because we're all trying to get to the same place, and we're not going to get that way if we can't hold up, right? You know, common goal is an important thing. When you got those ox plowing, you want them to have the same mindset. You want them to both be trained to pull, trained to get to the end of that row. That's what you want. Those are the ones you want. When you yoke yourselves with people, you want people who are looking to the same goal that you're looking to heaven, looking to eternity, looking to eternal life. And when you do that, things happen. And God puts, and that's exactly what Paul's saying in this passage. God puts people in your lives that you yoke yourself with, and when you do that, they change your life. They help you carry that burden. They help you carry that load, and they help you from reaching that point that you have that depression and that rage and that anxiety and all those other things going on in your life because they're pulling with you. They're pulling in the same direction. You know, Paul even got discouraged. Paul was at the end of he was at his maximum burden, right? And he says, even we came to Macedonia. Listen to what he said. Our flesh had no rest. We were afflicted on every side, conflicts without, fears within. You see, Paul had reached his maximum individual burden weight right there, his MIBW. He was at the end. Conflicts within, fears without. Everything's wrong. Everything's bad. But he says, but God who comforts the depressed. And listen to what he says. Listen to how God comforted them. God didn't reach down with the Holy Spirit and give them a vision or give them a gift or give them, you know what God did? He sent somebody to yoke with. He sent Titus. See that? And it goes right back to what Jesus says. Take my yoke on you. Take my yoke. Because my yoke is a yoke that's going to couple you with people with a common goal and a common faith. My yoke is going to be light, not because life is light, not because worries are light or cares are light or conflicts are light, but my yoke's going to be light because you're carrying it with someone else. See? Years ago, I was over in Walika, going to church in Walika, many, many years ago. We had these big old tables. Y'all remember them tables. Still got a couple of those things. We need to burn them tables. Those things weigh 400 pounds. Them big old press board, uh, particle board tables that are 8 foot long, weigh 430 pounds apiece, you know. And we was in Walekin. We'd ate something outside. Doyle was there, and Doyle was there with me. And Doyle grabs a hold of them tables and starts picking it, and I grab the end of it. And Doyle looks back. He goes, "Huh?" He says, "Been carrying in the middle my whole life." That might not mean much to you, but that stayed with me my entire life, right? Sometimes in my life, I'm so used to carrying in the middle, if you know what that means. I'm so used to carrying in the middle that I don't know how to say, get one end. You know what I'm saying? You see why we get to that place in our lives? You see why we get there? You see why we get to the point that we're depressed and we're anxious? Because we're trying to carry in the middle. Plain and simple. And we forgot that there's brothers and sisters in Christ who will take one end. I mean, them tables are super heavy. You remember when the fellowship room used to be in the basement? Y'all remember that down here? And we used to carry those tables out of this basement. It was awful, right? I mean, it was awful. You did anything to get out of that, right? But the truth is, it was a whole lot better when there was two people. And that's the way it is with life. And that's what it means about being yoked, is that you're that way. And that's what he says. Titus was his comfort. Not, you know, God sent Titus to him, but that was his comfort. It was Titus. When Titus came, it says, not only his coming, but by his comfort, which he was comforted in you, as he reported us your longing, your mourning, your zeal for me, so that I rejoiced even more. Paul says, I was at the end. I was carrying in the middle. But Titus showed up and grabbed an end. And it was a whole lot better after that. That's Rex's paraphrase, right? Because the truth is that all of us, I don't care how strong we are, all of us have places in our lives, a point in our life where we're overcome. In 1 Corinthians, it says, there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. You know, that's what it means to be yoked in this body. That's what it means to be here on Sunday and on Wednesday and to be in fellowship with each other. It means that you're not alone. It means that you're not alone. You know, I can do a whole lot in life if I know somebody is with me. At least cares about me, pulling for me. You know how sad it is to be alone in this world? And know that nobody really cares about you? That's the most terrible place to be in life. That's what this body is about. It's about not being alone. It's about having the same kind, the same care for each other, the same feel for each other. You know, in Galatians 6, Paul says, I didn't get there yet, but it also says we have to pull in the same direction, right? You know, and that's what I think he's saying in 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be bound together. King James says yoked. New American Standard says bound. It says, do not be bound together with unbelievers. For what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? You know, if we're bound or we're yoked to people who don't have the same vision, the same care, and the same love, and they don't have the same desire and the same hope of eternity, and we're yoked together with them, then it's like having two oxen that are trying to pull in different directions, right? You're not going to get any plowing done. Am I right? And if you do, your row's not going to be straight because these oxen are going in different directions, right? They're going two different ways. You know, and that's what God's saying. He says we're going to yoke ourselves to people because inherently we want to be with people. God never created us to be alone. Now, I know a lot of people say that, just leave me alone. I'd rather be alone. But I'm here to tell you, God did not create us to be alone. Even in the garden, Adam was lonely. God said, I'll make him a woman so he won't be lonely anymore, right? You know, God never created you and I to be alone. He never did. He created us to be bound together, to be yoked to something, to be in something. That's why we do that. And why are we going to be yoked to? We need to be yoked to people who have the same goals and the same visions that you and me I have. We got to be yoked together with them. So we're pulling the same direction. You got to have people that are sincerely concerned about you, that care about you. You need to choose those people, and you need to put them in your lives, and you need to cherish them like gold. Because those people are irreplaceable in your life. You can't replace those people. The people that really, truly care about you, that desire the best for you. Listen to this passage just with me just a minute. I want you to listen to part of this passage that we don't listen to much. What does it say? Let's go back. I just want to go back one slide for a second. What does it say? It says, if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. I want you to think about for just a minute with me. Consider this with me. How many people do you have in your life that if you won the lottery tomorrow, I don't play the lottery, so I'm never going to win. It's just a hypothetical question, right? But if you won you won $10 million tomorrow, how many people in your life would come to you, not wanting anything from you, and rejoice because you had won $10 million? And not be jealous, not be envious, not come to ask if you'd pay off their car or their house, right? How many people in your life would come to you and say, I'm just so happy you did that. It's so amazing. I'm so happy for you. You'll never have to work again. It's great. I couldn't be happier for you. And leave it at that and go back and do their job. And know they got to work the rest of their life when you don't have to anymore. Can you do that? Right? You see, it's really easy to rejoice with people. It's really easy to suffer with people. It's easy, but I'm just saying, as long as you're not the one suffering, it's all right. Right? I mean, it's real easy to have compassion and sympathy and to feel bad for someone and sincerely to do it. I'm not saying you're putting it on. I'm just saying it's a lot easier sometimes than it is to be happy for somebody when something great happens in their life. Because we all have that little bitty piece of us that says, what does it say? What does it say? It says, why couldn't that have been me? Right? But see, God says we're not only to suffer, but we're to rejoice because we're pulling the same way, and what's good for you is good for me. You see what I'm saying? What's good for you is good for Rex because it's good for you, and because we're all together, we're all yoked, right? And if something happens really good for you, it's good for me too. It really is. And I need to rejoice with you in that. And that's what it means when you're yoked. You're not only yoked for the burden, but you're yoked for the joy. In Galatians 6:2, and this is, he says, bear one another's burdens. But I want to tell you something here. I want to tell you something. I'm kind of a prideful guy. Those of you that know me, not as much as I used to be, but I used to really be that way, right? And I used to really be a prideful guy. And so if I was doing something, and even though maybe it was really getting heavy, and like when we had kids, because when you have kids, you're just a pack mule. You're just a pack mule with pink backpacks. But anyway, when you have kids, you're just this pack mule. And so I'd be carrying all this stuff and really be heavy. And they'd be like, well, here, let me take that, right? Let me help you with that. No, I got it. You ever say that? I know, I got it. I'll take care of it, right? And so you're packing it and you're tired. You really want somebody to take it, but you just won't. You won't say it. You won't say, man, I've just had it. Y'all need to help pack this stuff. You're like, I'm the man. I'm going to get this done. Don't care if it kills me. Die of a heart attack. It's all right. I'm going to die with this packs on my back. I'm going to make it happen, right? I'm pushing through. And so we do that. And that's what Cole would have done. He would have just held that until he couldn't have done it. I promise you. I know Cole. He would just, until I told him, until he just physically couldn't do it. Even though he'd be like, Rex, please let me put my arm down. He wouldn't say that. He'd just be holding it out there. And inside he'd say, man, I wish he'd let me put my arm down, right? But he would still do it. And he wouldn't say, Buck, get down here, man. Help me hold my arm up. Would you? You would never do that, would you? You would never do that. No, you wouldn't. And your grandma's sitting right beside you. Wouldn't say, Grandma, would you help me hold my arm up? Why wouldn't you do that? Because you're prideful, that's why, and because you think you can do it by yourself, and you can't, right? And we can't do it by ourselves. And that's what we do. But the reason you didn't do it is because you missed the point of this passage. Because the point of this passage says, you can't bear somebody's burden if they don't tell you they have it. So, if you're prideful and you think you can do it all by yourself and you can't, then this verse will never help you. Am I right? Because, you know, Wednesday night I could have come in here and I could have just been mad and mean. I was kind of mad and mean. And I could have just held that in, not said anything. But when I chose to share it with some people, guess what? They were more than willing to jump on that yoke and pick up part of that and make sure it was okay. But I didn't have to do that. I could have just stayed home, which I would never do on a Wednesday night, never have done in years. But I could have done that. I could have just said, no, I'm just not going. I'm mad, and nobody's going to mess with me. Right? I'm staying home. I'm going to be mad at home. I'm choosing to be mad at home. Right? But if I would have done that, I would have never shared that burden with anybody, and it wouldn't have been a blessing to them, and they wouldn't have been a blessing to me, and things would have never got any better. And you know, I'm going to tell you, what I told you about people committing suicide, and I really want to drive that home, is that you know what happens to those people? They never ask for help. Not that people wouldn't give it to them, but they had that mentality right there. I'm going to hold that out. I'm not going to have somebody to help me when I can't hold it anymore. People not help them? See, when you do that in your life, you live in a misery that you don't have to live in. I don't care what your burden is. I don't care what your problem is. I don't care what it is or how bad it is. There's somebody in this congregation you can trust to share it. I don't care what it is. And if you choose not to do that, then you will reach a point in your life where that burden will break you. It will break you. The scripture tells us, Romans, we who are strong ought to bear the weaknesses of those without strength and not just please ourselves. You know, brethren, we're commanded. We're commanded to yoke ourselves with other people. We're commanded to carry that burden. We're commanded to help carry that. It's not an option. It's not optional for a Christian. When you're a Christian, when you're in this body, we're part of the same body. We're part of the same yoke, and we're commanded to help one another. In Romans 12:10, it says, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. You know what that means? It means that you and I should care more about each other than we do about ourselves. You know those guys I talked to Wednesday night? They called me the next day. How's it going? I've been worried about you. I've been praying for you. Is it okay? Well, that means more to me than anything. Because I don't know about you, but 90% of the calls I get is somebody wanting me to do something. I don't know about you. And it's nice every once in a while I get a call that says, how you doing? I hope it's all right. That's what it means to be yoked to people, to bear burdens with people. That's what it means. So, I thought, well, now we got CBW, combined burden weight, right? So what can we do together, right? Well, I think together we can conquer just about anything that goes on in any of our lives together if we stay together. Because I think our combined burden weight is really, really important. And so I made a formula for that. And it's W times D times N. And you know what that stands for? It's weight times duration times the number of people that are helping you carry it. Right? And you know, if you got a lot of people carrying it, as the saying says, many hands make light work. If you got a lot of people carrying the load, then we can carry a lot together. We can carry a lot together. For a long time, we can carry it. Because you know what? We're yoked together with each other, and together we can do a tremendous amount of stuff, and that brings us to our MCBW, our maximum combined burden weight. I'm not sure how much that is, but it's a lot. It's a lot of weight, because I know the talents and the strengths and the love of people in this congregation. And I know that together, you and I have been through a lot together, and we will be through a lot together. But there's no doubt in my mind, as long as we're together, we're going to make it through to the other side. And eternity is going to be our home, because I have the best group of people around me that I could ever have. Because your maximum combined burden weight is always greater than your individual burden weight. Always bigger than your individual burden weight. And so it's important for us to remember that It's important for us to remember that that's always the greatest thing. And together, as God created you and I to be together in this group, together in this family, together, we can accomplish tremendous things. Apart, brethren, you and I are limited. We're limited by the ability, by the physical, the mental, and the spiritual capacity that each of us has individually. But together, we're only limited. We're not limited. Together, if there's enough of us, we're not limited by anything because it's exponential. Our love, our spirituality, our faith, what we can do together is unlimited. What we can do apart is extremely limited. Share your troubles, share your burdens. Find people you can trust, whether it be an elder or me or another member. If there's things going on in your life that you need help with, be as certain there's people here that can help you. There's certainly people here that can help you and that will help you and that would love to help you. And I will leave you with this one tidbit of advice as I close this long sermon this morning. This one tidbit of advice. If you don't tell anybody you got a problem, don't be mad if nobody helps you. Did y'all hear that? If you don't tell anybody that you have a problem, don't be mad when nobody helps you. Amen. Love y'all. If we can help you at all, won't you let it be known while we stand?